All right. Hello and welcome to Religion in America. This is RS 301 for the spring 2021 semester. The course is in Upper Division Area C, GE, which I imagine is what brings most of you here. It's also a course that counts towards a religious studies major or minor, and it's a course that I quite like. So I've started with this image, this flag. My goal today is to give you just an introduction to the class and your expectations, my expectations, your requirements, how to navigate Canvas especially, and just a basic introduction to the curriculum, to how it is that we'll be approaching the material. I'm going to set you up to really begin in earnest next week. You do have one reading for this week, which is brief, but we'll discuss that at the very end. And we'll see this image again. I pulled this off the internet, this image, which is a flag that is now for sale. It's called the diversity flag, and you can see that someone has reworked the American flag to try to include just really as many markers, visual cues towards diversity as possible. We've got different, skin tone colors for the whites of the flag. We've got the, rainbow gender diversity along the edge. And then where we would normally have stars, we've got a wide variety of religious symbols from, all manner of different cultures and historical moments. So what I'd like to indicate here is with this image is a sense that this class will do its best to, throughout the course of the semester, we'll do our best to try to get a grip on as many of the different strands that play into this larger tapestry, that play into this larger story of religion in America, recognizing throughout that America is both diverse and also it is also a nation with a central and kind of dominant historical trajectory. So we'll try to do both of these things, recognizing the variety of experiences that have come together to form something of a unity, right? So diversity and unity, these are two themes that we'll play on throughout the course. And in some ways, this is a history class. So it doesn't follow a straight timeline, as you'll see from the syllabus and the readings as they've been set up. It doesn't follow a straight historical timeline, but it works to follow something of a historical timeline. The beginnings of the semester will try to address a set of different religious experiences and follow each one of those through a kind of historical development. And then we'll transition once we start paying attention to the Protestant strand. We'll start more of a direct historical timeline through the development of Protestant worldviews within the American context. So all that will, I hope, become clearer as we move through. Kind of a history class in that it follows an historical trajectory, but it doesn't follow it straight. We are trying to map different religious experiences as they move together through time. So let's start by looking at Canvas. Okay, so I've just taken some screenshots here. Once you get to Canvas, you should all have access to Canvas. Please do review everything under the course information module. We'll look at some snips from the syllabus in a minute, but the syllabus will be the first thing you see. The syllabus addendum is a link that is very much HSU's own link. It provides all manner of resources that are important to know about, but which I don't include in the syllabus itself. And then you have a link to the virtual office hours. That's Tuesday and Wednesday. No other class has Tuesdays. So Tuesdays 2 to 3, I will be available. These are not required meetings, but if at any point over the course of the semester you have a question or you just like to talk, I know that time won't be available for everyone, but I would like to consider these as something of informal discussion sections. So please use those times if you're available to. If you're not available during these times, I am happy to make appointments with anyone at any time that works for you. We can talk on the phone. My phone number is listed on the syllabus and at the end of every message I send to you. We can talk on the phone, we can set up a Zoom. So just know that I'm available as we move through this asynchronous online class. Communication is going to be incredibly important. So I do want you to maintain focus and forward-moving momentum. And any moment where you find yourself hitting a speed bump for whatever reason, you reach out to me. I cannot help you if you do not reach out. So please know that I am here and I will respond. The next is a link to an article that is written by a woman that I just found delightful. I used to include my own version of this. Hers is much better, and it's also, in I think the lingo of the contemporary era. My children tell me I'm old. I understand that for some of you I might seem old as well. I don't think I'm that old, but anyway, please do take a look at that. Part of my job here as a professor in your college experience is to really try to help you to understand and develop a comfortable professional persona. It is important for me. I don't stand on ceremony in my own life too much, but I need to know that I've taught you to do this so that when you leave college and you are in the professional world, you're never going to lose a job or a promotion or an internship, any opportunity, just because your presentation has lacked professionalism. So please read that, How to Email Your Professor Without Being Annoying AF, and try to use it. And it will give you a model that you will find a comfortable way to follow, but please do try to use it. It will be important. You should use it with every professor that you have to practice it, so that when you're not in college anymore, like I said, you'll use it naturally in your own professional life. I've provided a link to the Chicago Manual of Style, which is a standard citation method that you'll use for any paper that you cite things in, and we'll talk about the assignments in a moment. But I would prefer Chicago Manual of Style format, footnote format. It is by far the most elegant of the conventional citation methods. If you can use Chicago, you can use anything else. So it's pretty simple, but if you have any questions, please contact me. And then I've also written up, it's not as clean, it was kind of done very quickly last semester, a 5-paragraph essay outline, which again, we'll get to assignments in a minute. But if you're not familiar with writing college level essays, I've tried to give you all of the hot tips I know. Not everyone is taught this. This is not a judgment upon you if you don't know it, but take a look at it, because if you would like to be successful in writing papers, you're going to need to know this stuff. And again, it's a set of rules, guidelines that you'll make your own. Much like professionalism, these are guidelines, but you want to find your own comfort within them. So do take a look, and again, if you have any questions, let me know. I will not be reading drafts at any point, so I have included the information for the HSU Writing Center. Those folks love to help, and that page includes all kinds of links through which you can access their services. I'm always happy to talk over the phone or via Zoom about your ideas for your paper. And I can help you outline them if you like, but once you submit it to me, it's a paper that you've submitted, so drafts go to those folks. Okay, so this is the course information. Read everything there. Start there. And now the next module is assignments, and I just wanted to show you, this is where you will submit all required assignments. Every required assignment for the course is listed here. WRR, as you will know having looked at the syllabus, stands for Weekly Reading Response. And I've titled them by the date on which they're due. And they do respond to everything that has just happened the previous week. So all of the reading materials and the lectures that you've just, reviewed, you then write me one good paragraph at the end of the week. And that's due by midnight on the date that it's listed. It is by far your major assignment. We'll look at the breakdown of everything else in a moment, but most of your time will go into these weekly reading assignments. Weekly reading responses. It's one good paragraph. Don't get behind on them, because they do form a significant part of your grade, and they really just are a way to keep engaged with the material. The genogram assignment is due on February 7th, and that is an opportunity. Again, this is you will see descriptions of these on the syllabus. That's where your assignments are described and the sort of instructions are given. But this is an opportunity for you to go talk to your family. Figure out a little bit about your history, because doing this at the beginning of religion in America is a wonderful way to recognize that we each have a history. We each come from a place, right? And we come from different places. When we were in the classroom, we would then come together after this assignment and sort of, draw responses from the room, just so everyone could see that, in fact, there is a lot of diversity in every classroom. That our parents and their parents and, our families, our friends, our loved ones, those who have been influential in our own lives, however we are related by blood or not to them, have had a profound impact on our own experience of religion. That early schooling and values shapes us, and of course we can choose. We have free will, but we have no choice in that. But but we are shaped, and early schooling and values does help to shape us. So I would like you to take a minute to assess if your parents, if you were raised with no religion, there will be some of you who are raised with no religion. That's fine. This assignment doesn't presume that you have that. It is worth knowing, though, and considering and reflecting upon it. And to the degree to which you are able, comfortably, to communicate with family, then do so. If you don't have access to this information, just know that you're not alone. There's really, it is a cultural reality in American life today that many of us don't have access to much of a history in terms of these things. We we haven't heard these stories. They haven't been continuously passed generation to generation. That's fine. But if you have different influences coming in, just reflect on your own experience. It's a brief assignment, but it is one to work on right at the beginning, and it is due pretty soon. So if you have any questions, again, I'm available for office hours or via phone or via Zoom. Make sure that you're clear on that. The other major assignment that is required is an oral history project. It's due at the end of April, and I will give you more information on that as in the next couple of weeks. I'm working with the center, HSU Center for Community-Based Learning, to really develop this assignment in a way that will work. But what we're going to be doing is soliciting volunteers from the community. Humboldt County, we are working with Humboldt County specifically, so I know many of you are currently learning from other places. You may or may not have direct connections with folks who are in Humboldt County, but we will help to connect you with somebody whom you will interview. Ideally you would do it via Zoom, which you would record, or via phone, which you would record. It's important that the oral history that you collect from a person is recorded so that you're not misquoting. Misquoting is bad practice. And it's very easy to do if we're just trying to take notes and remember. So ideally you do want to record, and ideally it is conversational, either via Zoom or phone, but it can also be via email if that's what you would prefer, and we'll find people who would interact with you via email. And our goal is really to just get a picture of, Humboldt and religion in the time of COVID. It's a larger university project that this class is participating in and contributing to just kind of find out in this moment of history, which future historians will look back on with some interest. It is different than times that have come before, to talk to people about if you've had a religious practice, how has it changed, right? And we do want to talk to somebody who has had a religious practice. So if you know somebody in Humboldt County whom you would like to interview, then that's fine. You can communicate with me and let me know that person. I'd like to keep it all in a spreadsheet to make sure we will need to keep track. We will need names, But I give you some instruction for that on the syllabus, again, where the assignment instructions are. And just know that if you don't know anyone in Humboldt and you don't know the first thing about how to find somebody, I will be doing that footwork for you, that legwork for you, again, working with the Center for Community-Based Learning. So we'll talk more about that later. It is due at the end of April. But there, you have the genogram and you have the oral history project, both are brief. Oral history project should end with about 2 pages of text, and the genogram is also about less than 2 pages of text. Other than that, I'm looking for 1 good paragraph a week. So I'm hoping that this will allow you the time to really focus your energy on doing the readings and thinking about them and maintaining your mellowness throughout the semester. So in terms of workload, it shouldn't be too stiff. It should be pretty mellow. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that. So just moving through Canvas before we get to the syllabus, here's just the beginning. It doesn't go all the way down. It cuts off right after Cesar Chavez, but it keeps going after that. But this is where you'll see this on Canvas. This is what it looks like, your course readings, and it says see syllabus for dates. That's important. We'll take a look. All of these things have dates attached to them, and the date on which they appear on the syllabus, that's the date by which you should have read them. That's kind of keeping on track. But you will not have to purchase any reading materials. Everything that you will be required to read will be posted on Canvas right here. So, and this is how it'll be posted. Some of them will be internet links, as you see the Basevich article for next week is, but most of them are, for this class, PDFs. So if anyone has any trouble with this, let me know, but most of them will be PDFs. The length varies. Some of them are shorter than others. Some of them are long. The longer ones, I've really made an effort to keep only 1 reading if it's long, or to make relatively easily accessible readings. But again, your writing assignments are limited in the way that they are in order to give you time to complete the reading. This is a pretty rich history, and there's a lot that we don't have time to cover. So I've tried to narrow it down to what it is important to understand if we're to understand the history of religion in America. So all of your course readings are available in this format on Canvas, and the way that you'll see this video will be linked right under, it's not yet there because I'm recording it now, but you will see once I upload it that I will place it right under William Herbertsmeyer's Phenomenology of Religion, because I'll talk about that at the end of this lecture. So I will be recording videos throughout the semester, trying to keep up with you, trying to keep ahead of you. And as I record them, I will post them to YouTube, and then I will post a YouTube link immediately following the readings to which they apply. So I would recommend that you go do the readings and then watch the video, and then go to the next readings, and then you'll see the next video appear. And you will see videos appear in this list in the order in which you should view them as the semester progresses. By the end, it'll be reading, reading, video, reading, reading, video. So you will have to keep up with this page. You don't want to just download all of the PDFs and then never look at this page again. You're going to need to keep up with this page, because this is the page on which I will post videos. Okay. So now, because I have limited the assignments in the way that I have, because this is an upper division class, because I know that some of you aspire to graduate study or are religious studies majors who have or are, other majors who have a particular interest in the topic, I didn't want to do away with the possibility of doing advanced work or honors level work. So that's what we're considering this. I'm making an extra credit because I know that right now it's difficult for many of us to just keep up. And the most important thing to me is that you learn, the story of religion in America. That's the most important part. And you can absolutely get an A in this class if you do very high level work on your reading response, weekly reading responses, genogram, and oral history. That's enough. This is an additional 20 points if you're interested in writing a thesis paper. And I will post a longer prompt to the thesis paper online within the next week. But this comes in its most basic form from the syllabus. It's a substantial extra credit assignment. Again, it'll be graded on a 20-point scale, and I'll grade it like I grade other papers. You're not just guaranteed 20 points on this one. You'll get a grade based on a 20-point scale, but that will all be extra credit. And again, you'll find extensive instructions, and this is due by the Friday of finals week. Again, I'm not reading drafts. More than happy to talk to you about possible topics, and many options, or the style of options I'm thinking about what a thesis means, will be listed on those longer, more extensive instructions. And it's for this assignment especially that you will need that 5-paragraph essay outline, that you should take a look at it, and that you will need to use the Chicago Manual of Style. Okay, so for those of you who feel that you want to do a little bit more work, this is an excellent opportunity to do that. I'd like to make this class something that is accessible to folks who are living under really straitened circumstances, but also available to graduate level work. So I'm here for that as well, and I'm happy to talk about it. I recommend office hours, whether scheduled or by appointment. If you want to do this one, let's prep something good. Let's prep something that you're interested in. Now we're switching here to a screenshot from the actual syllabus. I've not included, the last one was too, but I've not included the entire course calendar. This is just a little snippet of the beginning of it. And I just want to show you that I've organized the class by weeks, and that every week includes these 2 rows, to read and to do. So you should be keeping up with this course calendar throughout the semester. This is an important document for you. You want to make sure that you're on track with it. That's how you will succeed in this class. So for this week, we are reviewing the syllabus and course requirements now. Great. And you also want to independently review the whole of them, not just my screenshots. And you also will have read Herbertsmeyer's Phenomenology of Religion, which is brief, and it just gives us a sense of the stance that we're using. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. And what to do this week, begin your genogram assignment. And what I mean by that is start making phone calls. Start thinking about your family tree. And again, there's no presumption here that it should be a standard family tree. My own family tree is far from standard. I don't have the experience of, a nuclear family. Like my family tree would be a little messy. And my influences in terms of religion would be spotty and very strange, right? In terms of a normal by normal, I mean a standard sort of nuclear family, everyone's the same religion moving forward. Like, I don't have that going on, and I don't expect you to either. But now is the time that if you have anyone to contact, whether it's parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings, friends, important teachers, and if it comes down to you are in a place where you as a human, all you have is your own self, then reflect, right? But start to think about it. And then you'll see that following weeks, so we're just looking at week 1 and week 2. Next week, we will read Bacevich's Ballpark Liturgy and Prothero's Nation of Religious Illiterates. Those are the topics for the week, and I will probably record one lecture on both of those. Lectures will differ. The number of lectures I record will differ based on the content. So some weeks I'll record 2, some weeks I'll record 1. I'm just going to let the content define that. Next week, those will probably come into the same lecture. And then your to-do, so you need to read those. Ideally, you will read them and then watch the lecture. The lecture will appear posted under Protheros, right? And then to-do, you will continue working on your genogram assignment and your first weekly reading response is due. That weekly reading response for 129 will be responding to Bacevich and Prothero. If you'd like to draw Herbertsmeyer into it, that's fine, but it's not required. Moving forward, you'll be responding to the readings from the week that are listed above. And that's just consistent all the way down. Now, that's our sort of logistical introduction. But this is when we turn a little bit more to content. So the image on the left you saw at the beginning. I've included it at the beginning. And again, this is the U.S. Unity flag. It's something that is relatively new in my experience online. So maybe it's been around for a while, but I think it's pretty recent. And it really represents America as a bastion of pluralism, as a pluralist nation. That's what it is. And there's a professor at Harvard, a woman named Diana Eck, who has run the Pluralism Project for some time. You might look into it. It's easy to find. Diana Eck, E-C-K, and she runs the Pluralism Project at Harvard. And it's a great resource, an online resource of all kinds of different points of evidence for how incredibly pluralist American culture is, right? Now, Harvard is in Cambridge. It's in the Boston, the larger Boston area, which is itself part of the Boswash, the kind of megalopolis that is the Eastern Seaboard. And I went to graduate school in Boston, and so I lived there for some years. And it is pluralist. There's a lot of options. When we took religious studies classes, we were required to go visit all manner of different communities of practice, and they were available to visit. They were there. They were active. And so from the context of Cambridge in the Boston area, from the context of the Boswash and the Eastern Seaboard and really urban, condensed regions, America does look very pluralist. It does. Now, there are those who would also argue on the other side that no, America is not pluralist. It's a Christian nation, right? So I've just kind of that image is just, again, these are just images ripped from online. There's many versions of the image on the right that indicates that America, that we the people is somehow directly connected to the Bible, although God never appears in the Constitution, right? But somehow you'll read Prothero says that the history of, he says something very close to, the history of religion in America has been complicated. It's just complicated. Ever since George Washington put his hand on a Bible and swore to uphold a godless Constitution, it's been complicated. God does not appear in the Constitution, and so this really close connection of the biblical traditions, especially Christian ones, to the foundational principles of the nation is something that a lot of folks do, but something that isn't, it's arguable whether or not it's A, proper, or B, really representative of the nation. Now, where Diana Eck in Cambridge, argues very much for American culture being pluralist, across the river at BU, or Boston University, where I went for graduate school, Steve Prothero, whom we'll read from, who was one of my teachers, he argues that, America's not as pluralist as you want to pretend. And it's not because he doesn't want it to be, and it's not because he doesn't think it should be. It's not because he's defending the kind of, Christianity of a nation, one nation under God. It's not his role. He's trying to be descriptive, and he's saying if we look at America descriptively, then it has, since its inception, been overwhelmingly Christian. And so we have to be careful about claiming a pluralism that we don't embody. See where that comes from? So it's a different perspective. Like, are we a pluralist nation or are we a Christian nation? And our goal here is description, not prescription. We're not saying what we should be. That's not our role, and we'll get to that in just a minute. we just want to understand what is and how it is, right? America from the early colonial era has been pretty diverse, especially in the Christian frame. There is a wide diversity of Christians, different kinds of Christians, right? But diversity outside of the Christian frame, hasn't been overwhelmingly accepted for most of American history. So trying to get a beat on what America actually is, what we as a nation, like what is religion in America actually? Is it a coherent thing? Are there characteristics that we can see? Is it really a patchwork quilt of anything goes with equal power? Or is it more of a dominant Christian mythos into which other strands have sought entry and have been more or less accepted? I don't have, I was taught by Prothero, and so I'll admit that I do have that sensibility in me, that if we want to be honest, we're going to have to honestly say that even in the world where 23.1% of Americans now claim no affiliation, we call them the nuns, right? That's a new and very high number. 23.1% of Americans claim no religious affiliation. Even in that world, the majority of Americans claim Christianity. And of that 23.1% who claim no affiliation, many, you drill down deeper, as they say, into the data, many of that 23.1% go to church, Christian church. They believe in God. They pray every day, right? And so, if you want to be descriptive about it, you have to acknowledge all those things. And I think we'd be a little bit overly, aspirationally, naive to think that we are in fact descriptively a simply completely pluralist nation, that there is still a dominant Christian ethos that runs through America. Now, again, my role is not to tell you whether it should or not, but we will be tracing an historical development in this class, and our goal is to better understand the contemporary world and how better to live in it, as citizens in this world, as people who have to interact with other people who are not all like us. That's our goal. And we'll begin with the nation's beginnings, in an effort to understand how things like, the president's faith or lack thereof, how the civil rights movement, how the rights of minority peoples, how minority cultures, right, religious or otherwise, how the institutional debates about whether or not you should be allowed to have a creche out, on public land, a cross, or the creche is the Christmas scene, right? Baby Jesus in a manger, or prayer in school, or the Pledge of Allegiance, or the Ten Commandments posted in courthouses. How did these become hot button issues? That's the historical development that led to these being hot button issues today. That's what we're working to understand, right? And so we're going to trace that historical development in order to better to understand. That is our goal. We do not have a sense of the way the world should be. I do. I think the world should be more just, but what that means is, something that reasonable people might disagree on. But we'll be working throughout the semester to get a grip on that big picture without dwarfing or diminishing the value of the individuals who collectively construct that ever-changing, but nonetheless historically bound big picture. We're going to try to pay attention to both the dynamics of unique development individually and in small communities, and also this larger sort of national identity. Just a little bit, it might be a little bit, a little bit here and there, right? And again, this is why I think that those office hours, if you're able to make them, could be wonderful opportunities for discussion on these topics. So, your reading from today, and this is what we'll close on. The reading that you are assigned for this week, this lecture will follow that reading in the form that will follow for the rest of the semester, was William Herbexmeyer's Phenomenology of Religion. And Bill was, some of you may have had a class with Bill. He's a professor emeritus at HSU in the Religious Studies Department, and he wrote up this really kind of elegantly brief and clear articulation of phenomenology. And I'm just going to kind of talk through, these are the talking points I pulled out. I don't quote him, and these aren't all the words that he uses different vocabulary points to get at the same thing, but you read that, and it's important for many of you. This will be the only religious studies class you ever take, right? And so in this is a kind of a term of art. It's a word that we use. It's a big word. it's a little bit silly and you probably won't use it, on the street level, but it's worth knowing because it is the scholarly stance associated with religious studies, right? The logi, I usually do the etymology out and I didn't put it here, I apologize, but the logi, it means a system. It comes from logos. It means a system or a study, something systematized, something we have some kind of control over, right? And the phenom, like what's a phenomenon, right? A phenom is what presents itself, right? What we can see and agree on. So phenomenology is a stance that says, look, we're religious studies scholars. We're going to study what presents itself. We're going to try to describe and understand the world. But what we don't talk about is what doesn't present itself. We talk about it, but we don't claim expert knowledge on the things that are not accessible to an objective world, right? So just to be clear before we move into a more detailed sense of what phenomenology is, when we talk about religion in America, religious studies, any of these, what we mean is a worldview. Religion is a word rooted in a Latinate heritage that is very Western-centric. Like when we define religion, people define it differently, but for a lot of the history of scholarship, religion has been defined as, a community of practice that's tied to a sacred text that involves churches and a belief in God, right? Which is all good and proper if you're working within the biblical frame. That works. Outside of the biblical frame for some traditions, that works. But one thing it doesn't work with is oral traditions of tribal cultures. It just writes them off altogether, right? And we'll talk about that when we get to the indigenous traditions early on in the semester. But, it writes out all kinds of things. So, like, if religion requires a sacred text, well, then you've cut out the oral cultures. If it requires a belief in God, well, then you've cut out a whole chunk of the Buddhists, right? So, like, being clear about what we mean by religion, another word that sometimes works well for people is worldview, right? These are systems of meaning, value, and purpose, right? They're systems like communism, right? For many people, American nationalism, which is something we'll talk about next week, feminism, or any ism that provides you with a worldview. The way you interpret the world is through this lens. Everything, and it gives you a sense of purpose, and it gives you a metric of value, right? What counts as valuable and what doesn't. That's when we say religion, we mean broad, right? Everyone's got one, and everyone has a worldview. Not everyone wants to associate with the word religion because not everyone participates in a ritual community of practice associated with a metaphysical assertion of certain otherworldly things, right? But everyone's got a worldview. And part of our job in studying religions is to become, more understanding of people who do not believe what we believe, but also we want to develop a better understanding of our own metaphysical commitments, of our own worldviews, right? So phenomenology is a stance that's rooted in all these different, people put different phrases on it to try to get at it. Warm neutralism, right? That we don't judge one worldview over the other, but we're inclined to generously respond to each of them, right? Informed empathy. We want to be able to understand what it must be like to believe these things because we know enough about how those beliefs come to be, even if we don't happen to adopt those. Like if I'm going to understand Buddhism, I need to know, I'm not a Buddhist, right? I wasn't raised a Buddhist. I'm not a Buddhist, but I want to understand what it means to be a Buddhist and how Buddhists organize their experience, what they consider to be valuable, what they consider to be their purpose, what motivates them, how they make judgments on these things, right? And so I do want to inform myself about the historical development of the traditions that are included within Buddhism. And I want to be able to kind of live as if I took those things to be true, so that I might understand how a Buddhist who does take those things to be true might make decisions, right? Might respond to different community actions, might respond to different laws, right? Like I want to be able to imagine the world as if I'm in somebody else's shoes, right? Critical distance is another one. And critical distance is especially important, I think, when it comes to our own worldview. So we all have one. So let's say I'm a Buddhist. We'll follow that train. I'll pick up different identities throughout the semester, as we talk. I'm not particularly attached to any of them. But let's say I'm a Buddhist for today. If I approach Christianity through my Buddhist self, through my Buddhist understanding, if I know that Buddhism is true and right, and I want to understand Christians, but I'm not going to let go of the truth and rightness ultimately and universally of Buddhism, then I might look at, I could say, oh, you're a Christian. Well, yeah, no, I understand sin. It's just kind of a, it's wrong. It's a little bit of a like, you're very attached. Like, you get the suffering thing. Yes, life is characterized by suffering and change, right? I understand that as a Buddhist. But what you're exhibiting as a Christian is really a lot of attachment, and that is going to increase your suffering, right? And so therefore, in your Christian social justice projects, like, I think you really need to, I support social justice projects, but I think you really need to distance yourself from any kind of attachment to, this kind of Christian charity or love, agape, that you feel like this should be more universal. Like, you got to remove yourself from any real firm attachment to the person of Jesus Christ, or this notion of a God that is distancing you from your own responsibility to strive after your own understanding and enlightenment, right? So you're getting there, but you're not quite there. You see how, if I were a Buddhist responding to Christians that way, nobody's going to listen to me, right? Like, nobody's going to take me seriously, right? And flip it over. Like, if I'm a Christian who's looking at Buddhists and saying, oh, I get it. You, you want nirvana, that's heaven, basically, right? And okay, attachment, that's sin, right? And and no, it's not, right? It is a different measure of value, a different construction of meaning. And so we want to be able to critically distance ourselves from our own metaphysical assumptions enough to imagine what it must be like to have another set, right? And this means there's two kinds of things. The phenom is kind of correspondent to the logos, right? So now I'm moving on to the next point. Many of you have heard me say this, in the classical Greek, there are two words for word, logos and mythos, right? Logos is word as verifiable or falsifiable reality, right? It is true when it's verifiable. There are things like this, right? Gravity works, 2 + 2 is 4. Anything that we can together, regardless of our beliefs, we can see and we can verify. That's the logos. And if we say 2 + 2 is not really 4, well, then we're countering the verifiable, and we've got our own thing going on. For the purposes of religious studies, we'll say if it's a phenomenon, it's verifiable. We can verify that this phenomenon happened, right? That this objective reality is shared by the human community, right? But mythos is true when it's compelling. Mythos is word as authoritative pronouncement, right? And it's not more true, and it's not less true, but it is a different kind of true. So justice is important. The sunset is beautiful, right? Love is crucial to human interaction. All of these things may be true, but none of them are verifiable, right? If you tell me the sunset is beautiful and I say, no, it's not, and you say, no, I'll prove it to you, how are you going to prove it to me? You're going to say, look, and I'm going to say, yeah, I think it's just a harbinger of death. I look at it and I think, one more day unfulfilled, one more day gone, I'm one day closer to my death. That's not beautiful. That's horrible, right? And you're like, no, I want to prove it to you. You're not going to prove it to me, right? And if I say, no, the sunset's horribly ugly, it's terrible, it's a scary thing, but you think the sunset is beautiful, right? Yeah, I'm not going to prove it to you. If I tell you justice is important, and you say justice isn't important, right? What's important is getting while the getting's good. What's important is me. And justice is only important as long as what justice means is I get served, right? I'm not going to prove to you that justice is important. The closest I can come is encouraging empathy, right? That's how justice happens for people that's how justice is encouraged in communities that might not want it, is you encourage a kind of empathy or you legislate it, but you're just not going to convince people of these things, right? So that's the mythos. It's not more true, it's not less true, but it's a different kind of true. It's not provable. And we make it's a big mistake to confuse these two things. To pretend I can prove to you something that I can't, or to pretend something that is provable is just opinion, right? That's one of religion in America's biggest problems right now, is that, on the one side, you've got people who want to prove the mythos, right? They want to prove to you that, Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, right? You can't prove that. That's something that people believe or they don't believe. And if you do believe it, it's everything. If you don't believe it, it's not, right? And it's not the kind of thing that that can be verified into reality, right? And on the other hand, you've got people who, in American culture right now, in the development of religion in America, you've got folks who are arguing over logos like it's opinion, right? factual, verifiable realities are being contested as though it's all relative, man. It's not all relative, right? The logos is not really relative. It's verifiably true. And the mythos is relative, right? But in its relativity, it is absolutely true to those to whom it is true, right? And that's the next point. Metaphysical truths are self-authenticating to those to whom they are true. If I believe that love is important, then everything in the world is going to prove that to me. If I believe that self-aggrandizement is important and that love doesn't matter at all, everything in the world is going to prove that to me, right? If I believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, everybody and everything in the world is going to be evidence of that, right? If I believe that the Buddha was the, awakened one who has shown me the way, then everything's going to prove that to me, right? Like, metaphysical truths are self-authenticating. You can't argue somebody out of them. And there's really, it's a futile effort, and it's counterproductive. So this is one of the things that we'll want to remember as we start approaching different religious traditions in America. You have to take them all kind of on their own merits, right? On their own measures of value. Because metaphysical truths, next bullet point, are historically, culturally, and personally relative. They do change. They have changed. Throughout American history, we will see that they change. And when they come into interaction with one another, they change based on that interaction, right? They are relative. Like, if I'm a Christian and you're a Christian, how we take that to be important is going to be different based on our experience of, being alive in the 21st century, of being present within this contemporary American technocratic culture, of our own individual experience of the world. Like, those truths will be relative, but not everything's relative, right? Logos isn't relative, and there's a degree to which we accept certain things as basic mythic premises. But we accept a foundational agreement of certain mythic truths, things that can't be proved. And we'll talk about this next week, but one of those that we're all familiar with is, we hold certain truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal. Right? And I happen to believe that. And I know I've changed it a bit, right? But I do hold that, certain truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal. That's when you hold a truth to be self-evident, it means it's self-authenticating to those who hold it, and it means you're not going to. It's outside of the realm of verifiability, right? It's a mythic truth. It's a truth that we hold. So there are mythic truths that govern our worlds, and moving into an understanding of these different the cultural development of different religious traditions, and how the national context has helped to cohere those traditions into, like, if nothing else, a geographical frame, right? This is part of the story that we will be working to unfold. Last bullet point, finally, is, phenomenology is just kind of one way of saying it's not all about you. Like, there are certain things that we have to accept, we don't control. Like, that my beliefs in the classic metaphysical realities that religious studies tries, that phenomenology was developed in order to counter, is scholars who say, I'm sitting here as a scholar and an academic and a professor, and I say to you, like, let me explain to you what the human soul is like. Let me explain to you what the afterlife is like, right? Those were two big points for theologians working within the early university structure. They would teach and judge people based on their understanding of the soul and the afterlife. And since those things aren't verifiable, it's kind of, from today's perspective, unconscionable to judge people who don't believe those things based on a definition of those things that I happen to believe, right? So that's how phenomenology developed, was as a counter to the tendency to think that my beliefs are everyone's beliefs, that my ultimate truth is ultimately true for everyone. And it's just, if we're going to understand diversity, or the development of a singular unified culture throughout time, then that's not going to work, right? That there's a certain degree to which my foundational beliefs that I hold to be self-evident, it doesn't diminish that, my faith in them, my belief in them, my commitment to them, for me to recognize that not everyone holds them. And it might allow me to be a better co-participant in this life. So That's the stance, right? And you will see that phenomenology, when I do your weekly reading responses, it's a row in the rubric that I use, and most folks do really well with this. Most folks get full points for phenomenology. If you ever lose points on phenomenology in the rubric for your weekly reading response, I encourage you to contact me, because I can explain to you why you lost points and how. And it is this moment where it doesn't just mean like, oh, you're kind of unthinking or you're kind of a jerk. That's not what it means, right? It means that, like, we all do it sometimes, where we think our truths are everyone's truths, right? That's part of being human. But religious studies is the practice of encountering diversity directly and recognizing that we don't get to define what others hold as measures of value. That's not realistic. It's futile, it's counterproductive, and it doesn't encourage civic discourse in an increasingly pluralistic frame. So next week we will turn to Bacevich and Prothero, and we'll get a little bit of a foothold in like what's going on with America today before we then turn to indigenous traditions and move on from there. So any questions, concerns, thoughts that you might have at this point in the semester, please do not hold them back. Please contact me as soon as you think of them. And I look forward to the semester.